Damn. MP just got attacked by a grizzly bear. What's going on, MP Materials fans? Amy Hussein here. I'm going to be talking about one of my biggest investments and how they were attacked by a Grizzly research report. Here's the news. As you may know already, this company's valuation fell 13% today after short seller Grizzly Research said it sees a potential 60% downside in the company. The company described the stock as a low quality deal that will cost investors dearly. In addition, Grizzly claimed in the report that the company could be traced back to the Chinese government despite the company selling itself as the largest rare earth producer in the Western world. We found that Shenghe, a related party that is responsible for 99% of MP Materials' revenue and a significant shareholder, could be traced back to the Chinese central government. This has been overlooked so far and could potentially be a national security concern. The idea that MP is the only feasible competitor to Chinese producers seems like a complete joke, given that the biggest client and significant shareholder is controlled by the Chinese Treasury Department, they added. Now, this is in summary of what they wrote, but in today's video, I'm going to go over what I read in the report and what I learned from the report. What MP Materials should do to address this report, and what will make me continue investing in this company rather than sell out. Honestly, reading through this report, I learned a lot of new information, and it's always important to be open-minded, not completely ignoring everything that people say. So what I did was that I read through the report and I've highlighted some of the most important points I would like all of you guys to also pay attention to, and I hope management addresses these points on their upcoming earnings call or through social media as well. So here we go. One big point that Grizzly Research mentioned about was MP's relationship with a Chinese mining company called Shenghe. This company is very important because MP's revenue comes from there. 99%, or you can say basically all of your revenue comes from there. And it's stated onto the company filings as well. I made the mistake of not reading it as closely, so I just found out that today that almost all your revenue comes from this Chinese company. And because of that, they talked about how it's not just a simple sales relationship with the company. How Shenghe is actually having full control of MP's finances, from your net income, your supplies, and also your revenue. And MP has to pay Shenghe on an annual basis a prepayment fund. And until that goes to zero, Shenghe still has control of the company's financials. Now, they also talked about how Shenghe is a significant ownership in the company. 7.7% isn't that huge, but it's good in itself, in my opinion. They also still own them $50 million, and that's something that I don't see MP repaying in the next 1 to 2 years. It probably will take about 3 or 4 years to fully repay all that. So that's the equity interest that Shenghe has. But another important thing that that Grizzly Research mentioned is that Shenghe is actually controlled by China's Treasury Department. Okay? And the Treasury Department is basically funding your projects. It's becoming the main customers of MP, and MP shares are worth about 1 billion, which is 10% of the entire total shares. that China controls. 10% is a lot. 10%. And so they once again say, if MP is that company that's going to compete against China, why are you kind of being hypocritical and not competing against them? Why are you helping them in a way? You need them or else you're done, right? What's going on with that? And that's why I love management to really talk about as well. Secondly, they also talked about how this whole thing, how Shenghe being the main revenue of MP is actually being controlled by the China's treasury department. And they also talked about how, does MP investors know that? I certainly didn't know. It's probably my carelessness not doing deeper research enough. And they also asked a few questions that they want MP to address as well. And it's actually very, very good questions that I'd like them to talk about as well. It appears that MP is allowed to sell its products to other customers. So why does Shenghe still have 99% of MP's revenues in recent quarters? Love them to answer that. And that's honestly the big thing that I want investors to really pay attention to. Probably most of you notice already, but I like MP to really talk about it. And what's the direction that they see with this Chinese company? Do they see them relying less on this company, right? Because you can't be entirely dependent on this company. That's not a healthy company in a way. Temporarily it's okay, but long-term wise, no, that's not good enough. What are you gonna do to earn American customers, right? Because you crown yourself as a champion in the Western world, right? And to really be as one, you have to show you have great connections with American companies. Another great point I felt Grizzly research made was comparing MP to another direct competitor called Lynas Rare Earths Limited, a company in Australia. They say that MP is trading at a much higher current valuation compared to Lynas, and they gave it the best case scenario for MP to complete their plans and selling NdPr for all of 2023. It's great when you have competitors and you compare yourself to competitors, right? To see what your competitors are doing well versus you. Now you look at the revenue growth, right, between the two companies. It's still like relatively low for both of them because you have 19% and then all of a sudden you go drop all the way down to 5%. So very conservative. And MP Materials, next year is going to be pretty low as well. And then all of a sudden you get this super high revenue growth and then it drops back down as well. So I guess what you're paying for is that high growth, right, for MP Materials, whereas Lynas is more of a value company. And you look at its both valuations, right? MP Materials is valued at 6 billion market capitalization today and projected to earn about 273 million this year, right? That's a price to sales ratio of about 22. And you compare that to Lynas. I looked at their latest earnings report. They did really well. They are currently lower valuation than MP, $5 billion only, and they're projected to make about $375 million in revenue this year. Way more revenue and even a lower market size, and also a price to sales ratio of 13.2. That's pretty good deal, if you're thinking of investing in which one. But obviously, you just can't compare like that. You also have to compare their sales potential as well. And what I think Lynas did so well is that they're able to sell their average rare earth metal for a lot higher price than what MP is selling it for. You look at this. In the latest quarter, $35 a kilogram. You compare that to MP. That's only about $7.3. Okay, that's 4 or 5 times less than what Lynas is doing. Okay, they need to learn a little bit from Lynas. They don't just have their revenue from China, but they also have other international customers as well. Why can't MP also do the same as Lynas as well? That's my question for them. And when are they going to start having these international customers or even domestic customers as well? Right? Even though MP produces more rare earth metals, Lynas is able to make more revenue by selling them at an even higher price, okay? And that's what I want MP to learn from and to really give us a business plan or strategy on how they're able to up their average selling price. And you know what? This Grizzly research, they did well in this part. I truly acknowledge that they did well. And they also gave me better ideas on looking at other competitions as well, right? Looking at others, quarter report, what they have to say about the market itself, you know, whether there's still a strong demand and whether this trend is going to be temporary or really sustained in a way. What's the average domestic pricing for NdPr in China as well? So they did a really terrific job. I'm glad they really talked about it, and it gave me even a better idea on how to value MP in a way. Okay? And hope you all learned something new from this too. Another point that Grizzly research made was the lack of experience in managing a mining company for MP materials. You know, they say that management team, they all come from finance industry. They don't have any experience in mining companies. I think it's a good point. It's important to have someone experienced in some way to offer advices and all. Since if you have no one experienced before, this is the first time learning together in a way. And, you know, they might run into a lot of mistakes in a way. And it is just a good idea to bring in someone with experience. That's not going to say they're going to fail, but it's just, you know, it would be nice to have someone in a way. And hopefully they add someone into the future. You know, they could still be very successful managing this company even without someone that has experience in managing a mining company. And they also talked about how this lack of experience and connection to shareholders, especially the time when they sold about $356 million in shares, tell us that they are financial opportunists rather than an experienced management team. Now, I don't blame them for selling partial shares because they've gotten their company shares for quite cheap. Okay, $10. Your company valuation has gone up 2, 3, 4 times in a way. And you know, people need money at times, right? They need money to raise a family, for them to use as well. I don't blame them for that. Another thing that they mentioned about is that they've kept 4 operational team leaders, and most of them are from the same Molycorp corporation that went through the bankruptcy in 2015. How would any investors believe this time is different in terms of MP's technology and product capability? Well, here's the part where I think experience is important. Getting these team leads, they've been through the hell. They've been through that experience and that process of knowing what's it like to fail. They can offer the experience, the guidance, and that's why I really think it's important to have these types of, in a way, mentors and workers in there. You know, that's the point where I totally disagree with Grizzly. The next big part that they mentioned is how MP's rare earth deposit in the Mountain Pass seems to be misrepresented. And they gave us a few charts on Mountain Pass and the current selling prices of some of the materials as well. Very helpful. They talked about how in Mountain Pass, the mine that MP currently owns, about 80% of it is just really common materials, and only about 11% is the neodymium, which is the key rare earth element in the EV industry. Okay? Next up, they show us a chart of the selling prices or historical selling prices of these materials. It goes anywhere from a few thousand to, even a few dollars per kilogram. And they say that majority of MP's rare earth sells at a really cheap price and is not sustainable for its business. They also mentioned that even though this price projection for NdPr is going to go up, say double in the next 5 years in a way, it's not enough to support MP's valuation. And MP didn't say that most of its rare earths are cerium and lanthanum, which prices are pretty low, right? Because of that, you can't beat China's dominance in rare earths. So good luck trying to help America break free from relying on China. And I find this very, very helpful in a way and very useful because you get to know a lot more about the elements itself, what exactly is necessary, what costs a lot of money. And it is a good question because if only 11% of your mine is useful, right? Eventually your mine is gonna have a lifeline, right? It has a lifeline, it's just ticking every single day, right? The more you mine for neodymium, the less useful the mine becomes. So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna explore more mines? What are your future plans? Love to hear their opinions on that as well. They also highlighted a major issue with MP's production increase. Since the last 2 years, there hasn't been much at all. And that's something that you gotta ask management about because it is true. There hasn't been much production increase, not any meaningful one. So what's management gonna do to help increase that? You can't stay like this forever for a long time, right? What are you gonna do, management? So that's what they need to address. And Grizzly also states that MP's stage 2 and 3 plan isn't going to be as bright and promising as they expect. They compared it very similarly to Molycorp, the past mine owner. And they say how Molycorp spent over $1 billion on that project, which was way more than MP announced it would need to succeed in stage 2 and 3. And you have to remember that the operations team is exactly the same when Molycorp failed. And Molycorp CEO was an experienced mining executive. On the other hand, MP CEO is just a hedge fund manager who doesn't have the experience to get the job done. That's what he's trying to say. They also made a chart comparing the similarities between Molycorp project and MP's plan. They say specifically that Molycorp failed during a time when cerium and lanthanum in the PR were at historical high prices. And now MP is generating about all the revenue from cerium and lanthanum, which are trading 90% lower than they were during Molycorp's era. Now, the thing I have to say is that back then, actually, let's move on to the next slide before I say it, because I think it works out more perfectly. Because they say that there's gonna be increase in their stage 2 or either a time delay. We'll see about that on the next conference call happening next week. Ask management about that and an update on it, whether it will be more delay or is it actually on time in a way, or how much more money would you need. Now, they also say that MP needs to be able to produce viable volumes of heavy rare earth elements, such as these two super rare ones. And according to their research, this is highly unlikely to happen. I don't think they need to rely on these super rare elements to have success. They could with just NdPr and other types of elements, not the super rare one. To rely on this super rare element to succeed, you need a really, really special technology, and I don't think we're right there in this era yet. As well, they say that the rare earth supply story has always been undersupplied and overdemanded. They compared it to back then, how it's still the same story. But the thing is, like, this decade is just the beginning of revolution, like I say. Last decade, EVs weren't popular at all. They didn't have the reliable technology, and there's a reason why probably that mining company failed was because the amount of popularity and demand for EVs back then was almost none in a way, really, really little. But now, this decade, it's going to be exponential growth every single year. I can guarantee you that. Now, moving on to the next slide. They also say that we cannot ignore the risk of China's potential rare earth export quota increase. So by China exporting more rare earths outside the country, that's going to result in a huge drop in NdPr prices. And because a lot of the companies just say, oh, we really do need rare earth, right? We have so much hyped up demand, and China could easily snap their finger and say, we got that problem cured. But I don't think it's that easy in a way. China, they want to be independent as well. They don't want to give a lot of supplies away. They want to be able to be more of a nationalistic country, keeping most of the supply for themselves as well. So I don't think they are going to increase output as easily as Grizzly Bear has to say. Let's take a look at the conclusions of the report, what Grizzly has to say. The company is highly controlled by China, who has no interest in helping MP investors. They are a major political risk, as 99% of its revenue is from the Chinese shareholder company, Shenghe. They also see reoccurring patterns when comparing MP to its past company, Molycorp. Especially, the optimization plan is just a remake of Project Phoenix. Both of these companies are going to end up in the same fate. That's what they say. They also talk about how stage 2 is already delayed and will need more funding to be completed. And stage 3 is going to be impossible to complete because the mine doesn't have the necessary resources for that. We conclude that MP sold a great story of rare earth independence and prosperity to US investors. But there are major problems to the business. We're not surprised to see a company like this go through a Chamath-backed SPAC. Wow, Grizzly reports, you really hate Chamath Palihapitiya. You really do. Let's take a look at what MP Materials released in their Twitter in response to this. Now, MP Materials actually released their response before the market closed, 30 minutes before. And they say that we welcome Grizzly Research to a long list of entities who's doubted our ability to execute and consistently been proven wrong. Grizzly's report gets the facts and analysis wrong, displays a fundamental misunderstanding of our business, industry, and performance. For example, they say that we mostly mine less valuable rare earth. They fail to understand that all scaled rare earth deposit produces more quantities of lower rare earths. That's why they're lower value. But the higher value elements, namely NdPr, drive our growth. They also say that we take great pride in communicating to our shareholders, and it's disappointing to see groups misrepresent aspects of our business. Ultimately, it's a distraction, but we're not besotted. And they say they're going to report earnings next week after the market close. Look forward to updating all of our shareholders on the state of our business. Until then, emoji with sunglasses. Next week is showtime. Honestly, that's what I have to say. Next week is showtime. Management gets a week to prepare for all these analyst questions, everything that's been written on the report. The truth is going to be said next week, and I hope management does a great job of handling the truth, speaking the truth, proving and acknowledging what is correct in the report as well. And so thank you very much for watching. I'd love to see you all next week live on the earnings call. I'll be there. Hope you all will be there as well. Thank you very much.